Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Builder Nation. For today's that we have Sven. Please help me pronouncing your last name because it's really hard for me.
Yeah, it's no problem. My last name is Przywarra. Yeah, but it's
Exactly.
super complicated and I know.
Thank you so much. Co-founder and co-CEO of LiveEO, the Germany-based Earth observation startup. So welcome, super excited to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. So exactly, I'm Sven. I'm one of two co-founders who started LiveEO. My other co-founder is Daniel. And we started LiveEO back in 2018 with the goal to really bring satellite insights and satellite analytics into the mainstream. We want to monitor 1 billion assets, and I'm going to explain in a couple of seconds what that means. We really want to help to make infrastructure grids more efficient, safer, and just really want to make sure that the global networks and infrastructure are operating correctly. So over the last couple of years, there's been a revolution in Earth observation. We now have hundreds of satellites in space monitoring every single place here on the surface of the Earth. The problem is, or in fact, the big opportunity with the data is that you can really change a lot of processes and improve a lot of processes thanks to satellite data. But the problem is no one is using that data. And we are at LiveEO changing that. We're taking satellite data and translating it into actionable insights so that, for example, railway operators, electrical grid operators, and in the future also forestry companies, insurance companies can leverage satellite insights to make their processes more efficient. We are right now 110 people based here in Berlin, that's true. But we also have people all across the globe. And in fact, I think people from 40 nations, which is pretty cool.
Wow, so you guys are a big team. And yeah. I was curious to ask, I know that you went to school for engineering and management. Yeah. So why the interest in Earth observation?
Yeah, I was always fascinated with space and just like I think the incredible potential behind space and satellite technology. And I was telling myself, hey, it's great to work in the space sector and build rockets and stuff like that. But I asked myself, how can I have the biggest direct impact on life here on Earth? And for me, the answer has been Earth observation data. Monitoring the surface of the Earth and how things are changing can have huge potential in how we're living on this planet. And so I said, okay, let's build a company in that space. And this is how I came from studying, in fact, mechanical engineering to starting and now running an Earth observation company.
And okay, I know that you guys focus on vegetation management. And I wanted to ask you, what will you say this is a big problem nowadays?
What we focus on, where one of our big focus points is how do we make electrical overhead lines and railway networks more efficient and make sure that, for example, now power outages or wildfires are happening due to the fact that trees grow into overhead lines. And we see that this is an increasing problem for two reasons. One, the weather is becoming more unpredictable, meaning there are more storms, which lead to, for example, more trees falling onto overhead lines and causing power outages. In fact, a third of all power outages globally are being caused by vegetation, which comes in contact with overhead lines. And the other one is that if we're seeing drier and drier summers, hotter and hotter climate, and so if a tree is really dry and is too close to the overhead line, it's likely that they catch fire, a wildfire starts, and then we have hundreds to millions of tons of CO2, which are being created by this single wildfires. And we want to help to prevent both of these things to A, make these assets more climate resilient, and B, to not further increase the effect, the negative effect on our climate.
Talking about the beginning of the company, do you remember what was the first idea you guys ever pitched, like you and Daniel?
We started with a blank piece of paper when we started the company. We just said, hey, the Earth observation industry is great and we now have all this data. What can we do with that data? And so at the very beginning, we played around with different ideas, including ideas in the tourism industry. But in the end, the first proper idea which we've had was combining satellite data with drone data to provide live Earth observation. But we soon realized that you don't really need drone data, and drone data is still kind of an area of innovation. And so we said, let's focus on satellite data.
I mean, it has changed. But I mean, it's kind of like the same focus, if we could put it like that, because it was Earth observation at the end of the day. And talking about investors, I know that you guys already have private and public supporters. So how was your first experience with that?
I mean, I'm not coming from a background of entrepreneurs in my family, and also like I have gone to a standard public university like everyone does in Germany, which also didn't have any kind of exactly, closely knitted network as such. So at the very beginning, it was definitely new to me, but I love to read. So I read a lot of books, and read this gave me a lot of insights into how financial plans have to be drafted, how pitch decks have to be created. And I always was fascinated with the topic of startups and fundraising since I was, 15 or 16. It was also the reason why I moved to Berlin, I would say the European capital for startups in the first place. And then we started our company first based on public support. So we've been able to get some grants, smaller grants from the German and European government. And with that, we were able to build our first prototype. And then we went on and participated in a lot of startup pitch events. And we were quite successful with these and got in contact with first investors. And then in the end found our first investor who invested 1.5 million euros in our company. And since then, we've now overall, including public grants, raised roughly 30 million euros.
From reading books? I've never heard this. I've never heard that before. So You must really like reading, right?
Yes, exactly. And obviously I think this is the great, incredible thing about our time, that you can get an incredible access to incredible information so easily, and that also getting in contact with individuals which are at a very different stage in life. For example, they have gone through investment cycles, or they have exited the company, is easier than ever before.
And I wanted to ask you more, I know that you're an engineer and our audience is actually filled with engineers. So maybe you can share a little bit about the technical side about this on the satellites or the space technology that you guys are using.
So exactly, coming back to a little bit the basics of satellite technology, right? So we now have hundreds of satellites in orbit, and they are taking pictures of the Earth, and they are taking these pictures of the Earth so every satellite is flying over the Earth and taking pictures of the surface. And there are different types of satellites, optical satellites and radar satellites. We at LiveEO just take data from any of these satellites, and we are combining it in a unique way, building a data stack. And then on this data stack, we're applying our machine learning models, which we have previously trained on our own machine learning data, training data, which we have created. We have our own team which creates training data to be really efficient in analyzing large-scale assets. And then the thing is, okay, if you have a classification, a machine learning classification, you can't really do a lot with it, because in the end, it's a nicely, colored image, or maybe some bounding boxes. No one really cares about that. So the question is, how do you make it useful for an end user? And we've put a lot of time, effort, and resources into taking machine learning classification and making it useful to an end user, for example, in the infrastructure industry, so that a typical lineman, a typical person in the field can take this data and interact with it through our app and mobile app, and yet can directly see where, for example, alongside an overhead line, vegetation has come too close to it.
I wanted to ask you, was it really hard for you and Daniel at the beginning to find the real product market fit,
It wasn't easy, but we were lucky, as we've at the very beginning tried to be very, very customer centric. So we maybe spent a month just thinking about what we could do with satellite data for the infrastructure sector. And then we directly went in customer conversation and really tried to develop the product based on what the customer wanted. And that gave us really this feedback. And we directly also got customers which said, hey, I want to buy this. And that was obviously a strong indicator of product market fit. And now we are executing on top of that.
And now here we are, a couple of years later. And I know that you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, you guys started the company back in 2018. Yeah. So you had the pandemic in the middle of it. Did you have did you find any procurement process challenges?
If you're at a trade fair show where one vendor has a huge booth and you're usually a startup, in the physical world, it's harder to compete with them. But in a digital space, maybe it's not that hard to compete with them. So it's always hard to say whether COVID benefited us or was to our disadvantage. I would say we've crossed COVID quite well. So I think COVID wasn't too bad for us.
Can you share maybe what has been the biggest technical challenge you guys have managed to solve?
Yeah, I think the biggest technical challenge, which we've also have highly underestimated, is the just analyzing satellite data at scale, meaning you analyze an entire country or nearly an entire continent, is incredibly complex, and scaling geospatial analytics in a large way, I think, was one of the first challenges which we've overcome, but it's also one of the ones where I'm most proud of.
And the last question, here it is. I wanted to ask, do you have any advice for future entrepreneurs or people starting on this space industry?
Okay, well, that's a good one. Do I have any advice? I think like at the very beginning is like to start with the fundamentals, thinking about, okay, what problems can my technology really solve? And can it solve any problem really fundamentally better than any other technology? And then build on top of that your hypothesis about which market and customer segment or could be interested in that. And then really, really quickly go in customer conversation and to really understand whether your hypothesis is true. And maybe one thing is exactly speak as early to customers as possible. Yeah.
And do you have any social media handles? Where can people find you? Where can people follow you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Sven Przywarra, quite complex, so Przywarra. On Twitter under the same name. I've written some Medium posts about satellite data there as well. And also my co-founder and I, we record a bi-weekly podcast on the space industry called NewSpaceVision. And if you like that kind of topic or that area, just find us on any podcast platform you are on.
And remember, guys, that you can also find more information, interesting articles, interesting interviews, just like this one, directly on our website, controlhub.com/pillar-nation. We would love to hear from you. And once again, Sven, thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're all the way in Germany, but I highly appreciate it.
Thank you very much.